test. Okay, here we go. Friday morning, round two, maybe. Fridays are always weird for me because I have the kids get out of school different times and there's extracurricular stuff going on in the morning. So I'm kind of like running around town mostly on Fridays. So I'm debating whether I should get into this trade or not. There's a signal flickering right now. It's not quite solid yet. But if it does fire off, I'm debating whether I should get in or not because I do have to get out of here at a certain time. If I do, we're at 15 contracts now, which we're getting up there. And I think I'm going to go for it. Where are we at this one? 75. Let's see if I can get 80 on this. Okay, so I'm asking 80. The live price is 70 right now. So I'm just going to let this sit here and work for a second. It's 75. Oh, I saw 85 there. So we could get in on this. Oh, there's 80. Did you see that? Am I seeing things? There's 80. Come on. It was sitting at 80 for so long. Did I miss it? This thing is jumping all over the place. Weird. That's weird pricing. So again, I'm just going to sit here and wait for a second. Let me go back and see what my other alternative spreads are showing. So this one's 90, 65, 45. Well, I may have missed the opportunity on that one. I'll hang out here for a few minutes just to see if it comes back. We're getting back up there, 72. 75. Getting closer. $77. Oh, there's 80. I saw 80. Oh, there's 85. 1985. That was a great year. That's the year like the Goonies came out, Back to the Future came out, all right in that time frame of like 85, 80. Better Off Dead. You guys ever see Better Off Dead? What else came out in 85? I think there was like was Indiana Jones that? Not the first one, but maybe the second one. I'll have to look it up. There's a lot of, at least for me, like 80 iconic things that came out in 1985. But it's not helping us get filled here. We should be getting filled on this by now. There, one of these guys. Okay, so I got it at 80. All right, so let's head on over. We'll lock this in at 80. Let's make sure that's the right one. 5125. 5125 at 80. All right, so I'm going to set my automatic profit taking order right away at 30. Right there. Create duplicate order. I'll send that off. Okay, so there's our automatic profit taking order at 30. It's out there waiting to get filled. So let's come back over here and what is that? That's not right. Okay, so here's our trade at 80. I'm going to unlock this so we can monitor the live price right there. And I'm going to move this over here so we can throw in some entertainment. So I got some more UFO stuff for you. Kind of UFO, kind of paranormal, weird stuff. You ever hear this guy named Whitley Strieber? He wrote that book Communion that was actually made a movie. He's kind of a bigwig in the paranormal weird world, and he's kind of a weird guy. But he had that movie. He wrote that book called Communion, and then they turned it into a movie. And I've had a lot of other people who I do think are. I don't know if he's legit or not. I mean, he's an author, whatever that means. But I've had some other, I've seen some other guys talk about those type of beings that he said he saw, the communion beings, and those guys I think are totally legit. So maybe there's something to all this. Anyway, he's got some weird stories going on in this podcast I was just watching, so I'm going to throw this in here. I'm kind of hooked on it. I got to see how this story turns out. I'll back up a little bit. He said that he had he had this UFO experience where he was abducted. The movie, basically, you've seen the movie, and they put an implant in his head, he says, and he was just talking about that implant. And let me back up a minute here.
They did something to this alarm system. What was wrong with the alarm system?
I'm going to try to find the spot where he was talking about the
Kick the bucket tomorrow. So
the implant.
that happened. A neat slit had a great life. I mean, hanging under the garage door on its own, and it's so powerful that it completely blew.
I think it's in here. I'm just going to let it play from here.
Wham over all the way to the.
Oh, look at this. I was talking about this. Down here it says, in 1985, a strange incident occurred that would totally transform his life. So that communion thing happened in 85. I was just talking about all the great things that happened in 1985, including this, looks like. All right, let's take a listen to what he has to say here.
Scientists have just recently announced that they have figured a way to create a magnetic field that is independent of any source. And that was what was done back in 1989.
Well, I mean, we could talk about this forever, but just to close the loop, it took you a while, but you figured out how to use this. So I wonder if you could just describe that a little bit.
I did figure out how to use it. And therein lies another wonderful story. I've had a great life, I'm telling you. I'm 75 years old. And if I kick the bucket tomorrow, I'm going to think to myself, what a trip this was. Anyway, yes, I struggled with the implant. We studied it at Southwest Research. They got a signal out of it that turned out to be in a lab that was classified. A lot of what they do is classified work. And so even though they told me that they had the signal, they couldn't tell me anything about it. And 25 years later, one of the people who had been there said it was still to this day the most unusual signal that they have ever studied. So that happened, and there was an attempt to remove it. When it went down into the bottom of my ear, and it ran away from the surgeon, and so I left it. Decided my wife was against removing it, very much so, and I left it there. It didn't do anything. I mean, it would occasionally turn on. That turned on at Southwest once. That's why we got the signal out of it, and would occasionally turn on, and didn't seemed kind of benign, really. I just have no idea what it was. Then Annie passed away in 2015. About 3 or 4 months later, I noticed a slit in my right eye, a neat slit, a neat oblong slit.
Visual field.
In the visual field that you could see if you were looking against like a bright white background. You could see it, otherwise it was invisible. And there were what looked like typed words rushing through it. And I gradually learned that this was what this was doing, and I was helped by someone who eventually came here and explained it to me. I'll get to that in a moment. I began to think that these words were some kind of subliminal message. And then I discovered that if I was working in research on my books, funny things would happen. incredible, unlikely connections would be made. There would be weird synchronicities with material I needed for my work would seemingly just fall into my hands, and not in literally in a miraculous way, but it would just be there when I needed it. And I I began to attribute this to the implant. And then I met some people in the intelligence community who have been studying my brain for a while, and there's some unusual things about my brain that interest them, and they think that a lot of what I can do comes from these things, from these brain structures. So they were quite interested, and they decided, this is now about a year and a half ago, they wanted to take another look at the implant, but not to try to remove it, because it was, by that time, it's become my go-to essential research tool. I use it every day of my life. I would never get rid of it. So they tried to get a CAT scan of it and failed. It did not show up on the CAT scan, which didn't surprise me too much. But you could feel it. It's right there. I can feel it right now. I noticed that it became really, I mean, it began to work with me very intimately. And if I really sat down against a bright background and watched carefully, the words would slow down. Now, and I would be able to read them. And one of the times I was doing that, it slowed down, and I was asking it, "Who are you?" And it said, "It's me, Anne." Oh. Now, let's get into why that might be an incredible reality. Okay, before the CAT scan, I think they're called CAT scans, those special X-rays, yes. I was visited at 4 o'clock in the morning by two men, one of whom I knew. I've known him he's been coming for a long time. I first met him when he was about 13, and he's in his 30s now. So he's not from a normal level of reality. I know that very well. And the other man who accompanied him was, I think, a sort of like a soldier or someone who would have reacted if I had become violent. And there was a knock at the door. Now I was awakened by it, and you're not going to open the door to anybody at 4 o'clock in the morning. No. But instead, I rushed out and opened the door. I just immediately, and there they were. They came in. They explained to me how it worked, and they asked me not to get it removed. And they explained that it didn't produce material on its own, that it was drawing words from my unconscious mind, and it was like a sort of a super thesaurus. In other words, it would draw massive amounts of material out of me, and it was functioning as a kind of a muse, if you will, drawing on what was going through my unconscious and bringing it into just at the edge of consciousness so that I could form it into bigger ideas. It was, in other words, a brilliant machine. And then the man said that it was created by a man named Konstantin Raudive. And they left, and I immediately went in and Googled this name because I didn't recognize it. And when I did, I spelled it in various ways. I realized that he had mispronounced it. It wasn't Raudive, it was Konstantin Raudive, who was an EVP man. He researched electronic voice phenomena during his lifetime. And after death, there were people in the electronic voice phenomena movement who actually got images of him on a television screen. And so I began telling people this story because I'm here to tell these stories. That's what I do. They wouldn't be coming into my life if I wasn't telling the stories. I told the story to one individual who was an old friend, and he said, well, you know, that's odd, Whitley. I have that too.
Wow.
The same slit, and I've often wondered what it was about. He doesn't have any implant that he's aware of, but he has the same slit in his eye with the words racing through it. Now, here's the thing. He is one of the world's leading experts on Konstantin Raudive.
Wow.
So, my God, this thing it's technology from the world of the dead. Now, you're never going to hear a story like that from anyone else, and this is why my life has been so cool. And people say, "Oh, you shouldn't talk about that; it's too weird." No, I'm got a weird life going here, and I'm going to talk about it. That's why if I don't talk about it, it's not going to be weird anymore, and I like weird. I'm really having fun with it.
You know, I was talking with you a little bit with our mutual Jeff Kripal, our mutual acquaintance.
A dear friend of mine.
Yeah, and he says, you know, he was talking about himself. He says, not that many unusual things happen to me, but Whitney, he's radioactive.
Right, yeah. I warn people.
You're around here, and you're around him, and stuff happens.
Stuff happens around me all the time. Yeah, Jeff had that experience. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It does all the time. And, you know, if people want to, it's interesting that it happens more often to people who aren't expecting it or who don't want it. And they come around me and it happens. They'll get, like in Jeff's case, at that period of my life, I was being waked up at 3 o'clock in the morning to meditate. I still do it every morning, but they're very respectful of me. You know, if I don't want to wake up, they no longer wake me up anyway. But if I do wake up, they are there. Like this morning, there was a perfectly beautiful experience. And in any case, we were at the Esalen Institute together, and Jeff decided he would room with me. Since with these conferences, we'd usually double up. And I said, well, Jeff, you know, you're sort of the Helen Keller of the paranormal, but you're going to find out something tonight if you room with me.
And those of you who don't know, look up Jeffrey Kripal. He's an important figure in terms of making accessible the so-called paranormal.
Right, and he's also we wrote a book together called Supernatural, which you can get, and you should get it because it didn't sell nearly as many copies as it should have. In any case, it's a wonderful book. Jeff is extraordinarily brilliant man and has a fabulous, fun, open, questing mind that comes up with all manner of marvelous things all the time. So anyway, we're sleeping in this room, and indeed I am waked up by an individual that I just barely glimpse, who blows on the back of my hand, which is one of the ways that they were waking me up in those days. And I do the 3 o'clock meditation. About an hour later, the same thing essentially happens to Jeff. And he perceives it as a devastating challenge to his sense of reality. And he can describe it for himself, but that's essentially what it was. And that is what you have to get used to if you're gonna work with this level of consciousness, because it is outside of time looking in. We are inside time, and we don't look out. We are here to absorb experience in life. And if you were to be taken outside of time, it would be just like a fish being pulled out of the stream. You would be helpless and in the entirely wrong environment, and you would not be able to thrive. And we know this. What would happen to us would be, if we saw the time stream, our sense of wonder and surprise that is essential to the human experience would be gone. And therefore, we are here building strong souls. And you do that by going through these experiences and processing them through the medium of a strong moral conscience and an open mind. And if we can't do that, our souls don't grow. And so it's devastating, but you can get used to it. I'm used to it. They show up all the time. And I have a lot of fun with them. I have to say that, like this morning, the reason the 3 a.m. meditation, they started me on this after Annie passed away. They couldn't do it while she was ill. And they tried back in the 90s, but it didn't take. But anyway, it's in one type of yoga, it's called Brahma Muhurta time. It's the time of where you can learn and have insight. It's a time of insight, that those hours before dawn. And you can get into very intimate contact with other levels of reality. And, you know, I want teachers, and I've got some of the best teachers you could ever possibly imagine, like who came last night is this incredible, gentle, good being who finds me terribly funny, which is always important because I am funny. I'm not trying to be funny. That my brother says, you're not trying to be funny. That's what makes you funny. And so, you know, this is my life now. And I've just finished a new book called Jesus: A New Vision. It's up for pre-sale on Amazon, and it will be published in Kindle and hopefully paperback and hardcover too on January the 15th. And there'll be an audio book. And last night there, this morning early, was a sort of celebratory moment because the book is, it's, I hope, if you can read the whole thing, and it is a big, complex tome, it will change your vision entirely of who Jesus was, why he was important, and also will open your mind to hidden powers within all of us that he understood and used, and we can too.
So you have a lot of experience with these. You call them visitors. You used to be reticent. You didn't want to call them extraterrestrial people, but we won't get into that. But let me just ask this question. It's just kind of simple, open-ended question. What do these beings want us to know? What do they want from us? Why are they in touch with us? Why are they in touch with you? I guess maybe those are different questions.
I suspect they came to me because in my youth I was a practical joker. I've thought that if I hadn't played practical jokes on the poor Archbishop so often when I was a boy, that perhaps they would never have showed up. In any case, I think I've thought a lot about why me. And I think that the one level, there's lots of reasons. One is I'm smart and I'm open-minded. And, you know, that's just me. I mean, it's just what I am. I can't help it. And I'm, you know, and they needed that because this was going to be fairly hard to figure out. And the other reason I think has to do with my involvement in something called the Gurdjieff Foundation.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, in 1970, Anne and I ran across a man who was involved in the Gurdjieff work. And we read In Search of the Miraculous the book by P.D. Ouspensky that kind of codifies Gurdjieff's work. And we got involved in the foundation. And one of the things you do in the foundation, let me just very simply say what it is. The Gurdjieff's idea is that we are all asleep, that we're essentially living mechanical lives because our attention is not under our own control. It goes wherever life takes it. But you can live in a different way. You can live with an active attention. You can give your attention and retain your attention. You can move your attention. And we're the only creature that can do this. And when you live in the double arrow state, observing your inner state and the outer world at the same time, your consciousness expands because your attention has gotten larger. And so there are practices in the work, it's called the work, that promote this, make this easier, make it possible to do this. And one of these practices is called the sensing exercise. And what you do is you take your attention and you put it on, you amplify the sensation of various parts of your body methodically, part by part, by placing your attention on each part. And then you place your attention on your whole body. And so you strengthen this ability to separate the attention. And over time, and it takes time, this is, one of the things that happens, people will hear me talking about this and they say, oh, I'm going to do that. And they do it 2 or 3 times and no visitors show up, and so they forget about it. I was doing it for 15 years before the visitors showed up in my life. And I've been doing it now for a little over 50 years. I did it during the day or at night when I was younger. Now I do it at 11 p.m., at 3 a.m., roughly, because I wake myself up. I do not use an alarm. I want it to be organic, or they wake me up. I do it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and often at 3 o'clock in the afternoon too. And I do it at 1 because I have a group of friends who do it with me, and they need to do it at 1 because they have busy lives and so forth. So I do it a lot now. And I'm often engaged with someone from another level while I'm doing it at 1, at 11, and at 3 a.m. Not so often at the 3 p.m. one. But I do it at 3 p.m. outdoors because doing it in the sunlight is so beautiful. So what happened, I think, was this. Back early on, I had a brief time of interchange with the visitors where there was a dialogue. And by a dialogue, it wasn't verbal. It was in my mind, but there was another voice talking, like a radio, for about 5 minutes. And that has happened 3 times. And so it's a pretty rare occurrence in my life. And I got to ask a few questions. And one of the questions was, of course, why did you come here? The answer was, we saw a glow. And at the time I thought, oh, the glow of cities. And then, however, I realized that it was not the glow of cities at all. It was the glow of me doing the sensing exercise. Because I didn't realize this until after Annie passed away. And I think she taught me this after she passed away because we're still very close. We're still working together, actually, to the extent that I wear both rings. We have one body now, but we're still going. The marriage is still on. And so when you put your attention onto your nervous system like that, I think in some other level of reality, it changes you and makes you glow. And apparently, when I went out to that little cabin, they would see this one little glow in the night, and they got curious and came to see what was going on, and that's how my relationship with them started.
So that answers the question as to why they might have chosen you. But what do you think that they want us to know as humans?
Well, I can tell you, first of all, they are very knowledgeable, and they have all kinds of, God knows, I would say this, what they want us to know is as individual as each human face. What do they want you to know is what you want to find. That's what it is. But they will present themselves to you as a reflection of what you are within yourself. So if you are leading a greedy life or an ugly life, you're not going to have a good time with them. They're going to be reflecting that. And when I first started with them, I was, a very successful writer, and I was damn egotistical. And the first lesson I had from them was a lesson in humility. And they could not work with me unless I was on a path of building a strong soul. How do you do that? You have to learn to live by love, compassion, and humility. You can't do it otherwise. And the great thing about the Gurdjieff work, if you can get past the barrier in it, which is that as soon as you get involved in it and you start working, you start to think, well, I'm special and I'm in the Gurdjieff work, and they teach that there's only so much energy of this type, so we have to be very careful about who we talk to and so forth. And it has a very exclusive quality to it that's designed, it's a trick. Mr. Gurdjieff played a lot of tricks, and one of them was the trick of feeding people's egos like that. And you have to get past that. And once you get past that and start to embrace your own humility, your relationship to this other level of reality begins to change. It ceases to be harsh. You become engaged as a student with teachers, and they really do know what they're doing. They're good teachers, which means they can be hard, they can be scary, they can even be violent if necessary. The good teachers will do whatever you need. It's a prostitution of the soul in a way. They will it's a surrender, a deep surrender. They will give you what you need if you engage with them properly. And so I learned that the more I try to live out of love, the more compassion I show myself and others, and live a humble life, the better my connection is with them, and the more I can learn from them, the more in my spiritual journey.
So it's more like it's tailored to the individual as opposed to we need you, humanity, to do something to...
Oh, yeah, it's totally tailored to the individual. And they're not going to be, I don't think, I could be wrong about this because it's such a big universe. As one of the scientists who works on this on the other side of the barrier of classification said, we shouldn't think about it as if something might happen or they might want something. We should think about it as everything will happen, simply because the universe is so large that everything we can conceive of in our relationship with them can happen. Because, goodness, we just last few days, a signal from Proxima Centauri has been picked up that appears to be it's possibly an alien radio beam from something near Proxima Centauri. And that may or may not have anything to do with these visitors that I live with. Probably doesn't. Probably somebody more like us.
It's a big universe, as you say. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge universe. And what is going to happen is everything.
Now, you probably heard, Whitney, that this Israeli guy that was in charge of the Space Force or something, he's retired now, he's written a book, and it's his contention that there have been communication with the world leaders, and the world leaders know that they're here, and they've made some sort of treaty or something. Do you have any knowledge of this sort of thing? Do you know what I'm talking about, first of all?
Yeah, sure. I know what you're talking about. It isn't interesting to me. Let me put it that way.
Right.
It's not interesting to me because I've never experienced anything remotely resembling a galactic federation. I have seen two groups of non-humans who were in conflict with each other, and I've seen the outcome of that conflict. But I can't say more about it than that because I'm too unsure, and it's too provocative. I would be surprised if there was anything like a galactic federation because it implies methods of communication and a kind of shared baseline of reality. And I'm not so sure that exists, that shared baseline exists. That, remember in Star Wars, the first Star Wars film, there's that bar with all those weird creatures in it, everybody drinking. They're all essentially the same type of being, only they all look different. I don't think it's that way. I think that reality forms around intelligence, and it is quite different from species to species. I discuss in my new book, In a New World, the possibility that the visitors that I know see the structure, the mathematical structure of reality before they see the outer structure. In other words, they don't see an apple. They see the structure, the formula that makes up an apple first. We are the opposite. We see the apple and we don't see that formula, that mathematical structure. But if we did not need food, and in fact did not live in the world in the time stream in the same way that we do, as I don't think they do, we would not need to see the world this way, and we wouldn't have the same type of senses that we do. And I don't think they do have these senses. So I think that what we're going to find is not a galactic federation, but a Tower of Babel on steroids. That's what I think we're going to find.
Willie, I could talk to you all day, but let me ask you one final question. And you've kind of answered it, but I'll ask you anyway. Obviously, you were a young Catholic guy. You had a particular worldview which got shattered for a number of reasons. And it's quite apparent that this enterprise, I'll call it, has enriched you and enlivened your sense of self and your sense of what the soul is, what reality is. I wonder if you could, if you would describe it in that way.
Yeah, I've even got a kind of structural idea, which Jeffrey Kripal entirely disagrees with, but that's good. We want that. We need that. It's very important that we have a lot of different ideas. We made a mistake back in the 4th century AD by codifying Christianity in the Nicene Creed, and we shut the whole thing down. That's what Jesus: A New Vision is about opening it up again. But I think that the body is a kind of receiving device. I go back to the Pyramid of Unas and the pyramid text, and I think that the early pyramid texts kind of got it right, at least in my understanding. The body is here absorbing experience, which it transmits to the second body, which is we the nervous system is the least vibrant part of that second body. And the second body, in turn, transmits it to the soul, which is a passive presence of some kind that formed us and formed the individual. And if you can get to the point where your ego is structural rather than, it doesn't feel like you anymore, but it feels like a structure that you are kind of managing, you begin, this other part, this presence starts to become more active, and it becomes more able to design your life in such a way that it will absorb what it wants. In other words, you become an instrument of this higher part of yourself. That's what I think is going on.
Well, let me say goodbye to our audience before I say goodbye to you. You know, by the way, if you haven't read any of this gentleman's work, I don't know where to start. The one I've been reading is A New World, and I already know that I have to reread it a couple of times because I haven't gotten all out of it. Also, he has a wonderful website which is called An Unknown Country.
So there you go, Whitley. So I have to get out of here in a few seconds. I got this kid thing I gotta go run and do. So let's see where we're at. About halfway there. Maybe I'll try to see if I can get out at 55 here. Take half of what we were shooting for. Okay, so I'm asking 55. It's showing 65. Let's see, if I were to get a 65, that's 225. If I were to get 60, 300. Where are we at? We're trying to get 55, and it's at 55. I'll go to 50. So now I'm at 50. It's showing, it was showing 55. Now it's 57. Let's see, I should probably leave like at, I don't know. Maybe I can give it 5 more minutes. I'm working on this other indicator I'm testing out with this. So like what you can't see is that on another screen I have my charts and I have this other indicator up. And as I'm doing this, I'm just sort of testing out different indicators. I better not wait around anymore. Let's go for 60. Oh, it's running away from me. There we go. We're out at 60. So let's take a look at what that means. What does that mean? Oh yeah, so it's some of my other indicators. So I have these, I'm testing out other indicators throughout this whole process on another screen, trying to find something that can maybe help me filter these better, the entries. And so far, some interesting things, nothing really that amazing. But I'm constantly trying to think of ways to get better entries on these. So let's see. We closed this out at, did we close it at 65? No, it's 60. So we closed it at 60. So that gives us $300. So let's go to the Excel spreadsheet, fill this out real quick before I got to bail. So it's 3/8. Today's 3/8. 3/8/24. This was $300 profit. The total risk on this one was $6,300. And we were in this for like 40 minutes. Okay, so there we are now. That's our new numbers. So what do we need to do to go up to 16 contracts? So 16 times 420, 6720. So we're there. So on our next trade, we can go up to 16. And that'll happen next week because I got to get the heck out of here. So 16 contracts starting next week. We're getting closer to 20. All right, so that's it for this one. If you'd like to follow along with me on these trades, just make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel. As my son would say, smash that subscribe button and smash that like. And also join me on my website. You can go over there. I'll leave a link to my website in the description below. Head on over there, sign up for my free email newsletter, and when you do that, you'll automatically get an email response from me, like a welcome email. Just reply back to that welcome email, and I'll get back to you, and we'll go from there. All right, that's it for this one. Have a great weekend. See you later.